This podcast is brought to you by Velena and by the Spur of the Moment podcast.
The Final Frontier podcast. These are the voyages of Jake Boger and Justin Spur. Our weekly mission: to explore memories of Star Trek's strange new worlds, to recall the search for new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has had the spare time to go before.
Fascinating. But let's talk about Star Trek.
Yes, let's do this. All right, welcome everyone to the Final Frontier. This week, we are talking about the episode, the Corbomite Manuever, which, sticking with the trend of this series, I remember really liking this episode when I was younger, and not so much now.
I liked exactly generously 90% of it.
I mean, it's not.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there
and make it sound worse than it is, because it's not a bad episode. It's a different episode, but it's not a bad episode. It's a very different episode. But anyway,
another one of those bottle episodes. Very much a bottle episode. I guess it's not. There's a second location at the end. Never mind.
But fun fact, it technically is a bottle episode because all that set is a redressed Enterprise set.
Oh,
So
really?
from a production standpoint, it actually is a bottle episode. I know I wrestled with that because I was like, it kind of is and it kind of isn't, but I guess from a production standpoint, it is.
So I've got, before we jump into the story, I've got two notes about that Paramount Plus description. Two notes this time. And the first note is the Corbomite maneuver at all similar to the Holdo maneuver? And ultimately, I would argue, and we're going to get there, a little bit. And I'll justify it later on when we get to it. I will justify it. And then now opinion changed, but Kirk doesn't strike me as a very good bluffer. This episode will be interesting.
This episode chronologically takes place first.
I did notice that for one reason, and I bet you can guess why.
Oh,
we're wearing the same color shirt. Yeah, yep. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
So this episode takes place during stardates 1512.2 and 1514.1. Show date is still the year 2266, and the original air date for this episode was November 10th, 1966. And the episode was written by Jerry Soule and directed by Joseph Sargent. And like I just said, this is actually the first episode produced after the two pilots, The Cage and Where No Man Has Gone Before. It shows, for one thing, Spock has that weird inflection that he had in The Cage still.
Stand by the photograph.
The whole check the circuit.
Yeah, I absolutely did notice that, yeah.
And some really, shall we generously say, adventurous camera work that we never see again for reasons.
There's a couple bits of cinematography in this that I quite like that I'm going to bring up as we get to it. But I quite like some of it. I was like, oh, this is interesting stuff.
Yeah, what's funny about this, though, is that this was supposed to be the first production run episode after the pilot. It actually ended up being the 10th. So this is our 11th episode, their 10th. And the reason was because there's a lot of visual effects in this episode. And they took a long time. Yeah. They took a long time to complete, which is why it was in the order that it was. Our story begins with the Enterprise finishing a third day of star mapping when their novice navigator, which I don't know why the description says he was a novice. It never makes it clear. They make it clear that he's younger, but they don't make it clear that he's a novice.
They make it clear that he's new-ish to, well, at least Bones does, that he's new-ish to that position.
Oh, okay. So I guess he is a novice navigator. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. And you're right. Now, after you said that, yeah.
Yeah, because Bones several times is like, you may have promoted him prematurely, Jim.
Yeah. But so anyway, Lieutenant Bailey spots a large spinning multicolored cube floating in space, blocking the Enterprise's path. As you mentioned, Uhura's in gold in this episode, one of two
Yep.
episodes in which she is in that old command garb. Sulu, however, and this is canon, apparently. I did not know this was canon, but this is canon. Sulu, by this point, has transferred to the command division from the sciences division following his premiere in the pilot. Production wise, the change was made because the producers realized there's no need for an astrophysicist in every single episode of a show that takes place in space. So,
That makes sense.
well, because everybody on a spaceship should have at least a rudimentary knowledge, like be knowledgeable enough about astrophysics to survive on a
Yeah,
spaceship. So,
you're not
it,
wrong.
it, it actually really wouldn't make that much sense to have a dedicated astrophysicist on board a starship because
You would think it would be part of the what's the word I'm looking for? Training process, I suppose, of joining like a space crew would be learning at least like a year one. Like if getting on the Enterprise requires a degree, like enter a beginner level, certainly you would imagine that they would require.
yeah, like I'm not saying they would have to have a PhD, but I mean it's kind of like it's just kind of like basic knowledge, you know,
Yeah, like I'm
for
talking like
the job.
a first year class at the very least, like for the degree.
Well, and you got to imagine that by the 23rd century, like this would be not necessarily common knowledge, but it would be kind of to graduate from Starfleet Academy. I think you would have to have at least a certain degree of skill when it comes to astrophysics, mathematics, all that stuff.
Imagine. About when in regards to her gold outfit, I will say I definitely in this episode got why they in the decision making clearly changed her to red because there's like a big like wide shot of the entire crew and it's just incredibly uninteresting when half of the crew are the same color. It
This is
provides
true.
like variation as I imagine was probably the reasoning. Also my question about when they're taking the pictures is that technically the first digital photograph?
Okay.
I've stumped him, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I think I'm trying to make sense of what you're saying in my head. So, what pictures are you referring to?
At the beginning of the episode, when they're taking the star maps, they're taking the pictures on the screen of the you like line it up and take the picture. Spock and the other Spock, I forget the guy's
So,
name. There's three
so,
of them that are coordinating it.
so I think a more accurate way to describe that is that is a digital photo that they didn't know would be a digital photo, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
That's to
Because
me, yeah.
yeah, because digital photography did not, at least to my knowledge, it didn't exist yet. I don't think
No,
it
I
did. No,
not to me it wouldn't. No,
but
they conceived of digital photography well before it was a conceived idea, which at least as far as I would describe, that's what that is.
yes.
That's what it looked like to me. That's all I'm saying. And then obviously when we got to the cube, my first note about the cube is big capital letters, space cube.
Space Cube.
Space cube.
And
And then
that is the name for this episode.
space cube.
I was
And then
wondering.
obviously, where's the captain? He sort of seems like he should be here.
He's off duty, sir. He's got to rest too. He's only human. But I actually had to note that Spock isn't too bad in the captain's chair.
Yeah. He could pull it off.
Well,
I mean,
especially
he's kind of a dick, but I mean,
he's
you kind of need that.
he's a little curt, but yeah. Well, also, I mean, it is a science mission, and I get the feeling. Oh, I'm sorry, Kirk isn't sleeping. He is doing a physical, actually. But yeah, this is a scientific part of the mission. I'm sure Kirk was like, "This is boring. You got the con, nerd."
You've got this. Well, I mean, we find out immediately in the next scene where Kirk is. Like, probably Bones was like, you don't need to be here. And also, Kirk is also technically a science nerd, as we've discovered. So maybe he wanted to be there.
He's a 23rd century science nerd, though. So I mean,
True.
I suppose he used to be a teacher. So I mean, there's something to that.
I do have quite when we get to the exercise scene, I have several questions about that scene. Weirdly enough.
I mean, technically we're there because the synopsis kind of skips the fact I'm mentioning the fact that there's a physical because
Oh, okay.
it has the really cool cardio leg machine
Well,
in the
I
wall.
had a question about that. I did not understand how that machine even worked. I was like, what is that? A cardio machine? Is it a physical and like is it a resistance machine? It was very perplexing. I said that the scene has real. That's what she said. Energy. Um, And then is this the origin of Bones' iconic catchphrase? I'm not a doctor, I'm a blank.
What am I, a doctor or a moon shuttle conductor?
Yes, it is. This is, well, I don't know if this is the
Excellent.
origin. This is the first instance of it. Although it's technically not exactly there, but it's close enough because the line is actually, "What am I, a doctor or a moon shuttle conductor?"
Yeah, I thought that was funny. I was like, hey, I recognize that
But
thing.
this
I
is
recognize.
Yeah, this is considered to be a doctor, not a quote.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so it's the first one. Awesome, love it.
We also see Jimmy Doohan's missing finger again briefly in the conference room scene when he passes the coffee thermos.
Oh, interesting.
And I gotta say, they did. I mean, it's well known they tried to keep that hidden as best they could. They do a very good job because if I didn't know it was there, I
Yeah.
would never have seen it.
No, I certainly don't notice it.
Bailey advocates attacking it with phasers. Kirk instead orders the ship to back away from the object. The cube pursues them, though, emitting harmful radiation, and Kirk reluctantly orders it to be destroyed.
That scene where he advocates for blowing it up. I got sassy Spock because he gives him a little bit of sass. The Sulu giving him the what for is a fun interaction. I really quite enjoyed that. And of course, sassy Scotty. Everyone is just kind of being a dick to Bailey. And this episode at this point really reminded me of there's an you don't watch Doctor Who, right? I can't, yeah.
I do not.
There's an episode in modern Doctor Who where a bunch of cubes like wind up on Earth, and the Doctor just kind of has to hang around and get impatient because he doesn't do that, and he doesn't know what the cube is. And that's what this kind of part where they're all just kind of getting impatient, waiting around. They don't know what to do. That really reminded me of that.
The one thing I do like that this episode showcases, and it never comes out and says it, but it's true. I don't know if you're watching this. I don't know if you've ever been in a really stressful situation where nobody really knows what's going on. It is the worst because nobody knows what's going on. Nobody really knows what to do. Some people are trying to figure it out, but you're basically just sitting there waiting. And depending on the severity, so you may be waiting to die, or you might just not know when you're going to go. It doesn't really matter what the stakes are. Obviously, the stress raises as the stakes do, but it's still a very even like, let's imagine you're out with a group of friends or your family, and everybody's arguing about what to do, and you're just like, can somebody just make a decision?
Yeah. My dad's like that. My dad's that kind of person.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, that's a real low stakes example, but it's still like just the fact that it's the unknown part that really adds to the stress of it all. Because here's the thing: if they know, this is kind of an odd thing to say, but I bet you if they knew that the cube was trying to hurt them, it still would have been stressful. Don't get me wrong, but it's a different kind of stress.
yes,
Where at least
absolutely.
everybody knows what the mission is: get away from the cube or blow it up. Like we have two defined options and we know what to do. But the whole like trying to figure it out, I can imagine that being one of the most stressful days on the Enterprise. Not
I'm
gonna lie.
sure. Yeah, I'm sure. And then we were talking. You brought up the cinematography. That shot that of the underside of the Enterprise with the cube blurry in the background. I love that. That was a really cool looking shot. I'm like, this is surprisingly like advanced looking for this kind of show. I really thought it was.
I think that may have been. Oh, you didn't read what's the synopsis?
The synopsis for the episode.
Yeah.
Is that Kirk has to call the bluff of a particularly powerful alien.
Oh, Paramount Plus.
That's the.
Well, and technically, Kirk's not calling his bluff. He didn't call Kirk's bluff.
Right.
But we'll get there. I just wrote down that Bailey's obviously a Republican.
We've got phaser weapons. I vote we blast it.
Bridge to phaser gun crew.
Caliban.
Yes.
He's like
yes,
Mr. Quit Draw over here. Everybody's like, what could Spock's over here? What could it be? Kirk's like, I don't know. What could it be? Bailey's like, shoot it.
Just shoot it. I vote to shoot it. My favorite line, and I will take that into consideration when this becomes a democracy. It's really funny.
Yeah, you said Spock was sassy. Kirk's pretty sassy in this episode.
Well, that's why I was like, everyone's being a dick to him.
I was gonna say everybody, like, I get it. I mean, the Enterprise crew at this point in their mission is clearly just everyone's on edge. This is clearly an early mission for them because we touch more on this later, but Kirk alludes to his yeoman being new. And at this point in the show, by the time we're at episode 10, we've seen Yeoman Rand more than a few times. So
yeah.
But I thought it was kind of funny that Kirk's kind of like really, really crabby.
Yeah, he kind of was, but also like he'd been kind of pulled from a task, I guess. Yeah, this episode was very much like that, where it was just a lot. It was just like a series of escalating events where he just
Yeah.
didn't have time to react to anything.
Which again, stressful situation. Like we said, he doesn't have time to react because something else happens. This is also the second episode in a row where McCoy pulls the "I'll enter this in my medical logs."
I intend to challenge your actions in my medical records. I'll state that I warned you about Bailey's condition. Now, that's no bluff.
Anytime you can bluff me, Doctor.
Yeah,
Checks on Kirk, and both times it pisses Kirk off.
yeah.
So as Kirk is having lunch in his quarters, a gigantic glowing sphere approaches the Enterprise. I don't know if I liked or didn't like the scene with Bones Kirk in his quarters because to me it seemed like, and I'm glad they moved away from this very quickly, but it seemed like Kirk and McCoy's relationship was much more adversarial in this episode.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I quite liked but I like the differing between the interaction he had with Spock prior to that moment and the difference from that to McCoy, which was a bit more challenging because I found in earlier episodes that Spock had his moments of being a bit more challenging. There was a weird McCoy did take a weird fascination or affection for Bailey. I did find where he was like really insistent that like it was like that he was a young Captain Kirk, which I thought was it was a plot point that didn't really seem to come up.
Considering the
Again.
ending of this episode, which we'll get to, that's really funny. Yeah, so I don't know. And then I did find him like another so 1960s moment where his lunch is brought to him and it's a salad, and he's like, "The fuck is this?"
Yeah, oh yeah, I said night I have 1960s sexism, we meet again.
Well, no, I mean
And
just the
then
fact that Kirk's like a salad. Why did you bring me what my food eats?
right. But that was this was the point where I kind of confirmed your idea that maybe female administration or female yeomans were relatively new because he's like, why would I have this woman help me? Seemed to imply
Just
that
just like Captain Pike, almost
yeah,
line by line.
yeah, yeah. I was like, oh yeah, that definitely seems to confirm what Jake said.
I mean, I just noticed it, and it's
Even though as far as the show is concerned, she's been a very effective yeoman up until this point. If you're watching this in order, anyway.
has she?
I mean, if her job is to bring him shit, I mean, she seems to be pretty good at that.
That is sexist.
I'm at this. What the show makes it look like her job is. That's all I'm saying. It would be sexist if it was a man bringing him shit. I mean,
Fair.
all I'm
That's
saying.
that's true. That's
We
true.
call him a gopher, which is what apparently she is. Basically,
Oh, so she's a go for her now? She's just there to
she's a
be.
gopher. She's a gopher space coffee. Go for space donuts.
Wait, which episode was it? This episode? No, there was another episode where they're in a very, very tense. No, it is this episode where they're in a very tense situation, and then Yeoman Rand just shows up randomly on the bridge with coffee, and
With
he's
coffee, yeah.
and
That's
he's
later
like,
in the episode.
and he's like,
Coffee,
"Oh."
Yeoman Ren.
I'm just like, well, is Janeway related to Kirk distantly? Because I'm starting to see a connection here.
It felt that moment felt like a that you're right, because this was an earlier in production episode that was going to be like a running bit with her where she would like bring inappropriate things in tense moments. Like that's what that like this feels like it's a gag from another episode. What is like she's a totally different character in this episode.
It does. It feels like a gag they were trying to lay the foundation for, and it just didn't work.
It just didn't work. Yeah.
Like it didn't, because she is so nonchalantly just entering the bridge during like a high stress, high alert situation. And
I would argue the salad is a similar thing of her not reading the room. Like this really doesn't feel like the moment.
yeah. Well, technically, Bones updated his meal plan, so that's why she brought. But then she just casually mentioned, everybody's like, "How did you get coffee? Aren't the system?" And she's like, "I used a hand phaser." I'm like, "That seems dangerous."
It seemed, yeah, like it was like they were going with the like she's a dumb blonde, and everyone was like, oh, I mean, but is it the 1960s? Would they have been? That's fairly hackneyed at that point. I can't imagine they would have been.
Well, but Gene Roddenberry's whole thing that everybody always talks about was that he was so progressive and ahead of his time. And frankly, I mean, I guess compared to 1966 television,
Yeah,
I mean, maybe,
temporarily, yeah, but by
I'm s-
today's
I-
standards, not as much as we
well,
think.
but even by standards of the day, because it's like we keep seeing, I'm seeing a lot of 1960s shit in here, And granted,
That is true.
I wasn't alive in the 1960s, so I don't know how truly radical this was. But I mean, I'm again, like you said, we're seeing a lot of like ditzy blonde coffee go-getter, office
But
girls.
also, if they cut it out, so like, yeah, they clearly they were aware of the fact that this didn't work.
Yeah, that is fair. Clearly, yeah. So they clearly learned. Also, the Fesarius, which is the big globe ship, was made
Yeah,
from.
the shot of the Enterprise pulling up to it, that was really cool. That was
Yeah,
really cool. I really
although
liked that. I was like, that was
I
so cool.
I do think that was CGI augmented.
It didn't look like it. It looked like there's a couple of moments where I noticed 1960s special effect trickery, and that looked like they just had a still image of the Enterprise, the model, and that they just zoomed it into the still image of the other ship. Because there's a moment later on where I saw um Kirk and the rest of them when they teleport onto the planet, they do that moment of you can see the director going action and you're blended and you can see them literally do that. So I'm like, I can see that. So I could see some old school filmmaking technique in there where I was like, it might not be.
Oh, I just mean it was. I'm pretty sure it was augmented because there's a lot of shots now that we've been going through the Paramount Plus. Um, I've noticed a lot of shots that just seem to be a little too smooth. So the shot itself might have been the original shot, but just enhanced with
Tweaked
some
up a bit. I could see
CGI.
that.
But that original ship was made from ping pong balls glued to a plaster of Paris shell.
Really, it looked
Yeah.
cool. I actually quite like the design.
Commander Baylock identifies his ship as the Fesarius, the flagship of the First Federation, not to be confused with the Second United Federation of Planets. He explains that the destroyed cube was a border marker. Baylock announces that he will destroy the Enterprise for trespassing into First Federation territory and destroying the marker. It seems like a really, stiff penalty for.
Okay. There's a few notes I have of this immediate section of one. The first one is Kirk refers to the Enterprise as the United Earthship Enterprise, which didn't feel right. Is that
It,
right?
yeah, I have a note on that. Kirk identifies the Enterprise as the United Earth ship. Captain Kirk's Enterprise is still under the United Earth Space Probe Agency, or USPA, which is mentioned in the next few episodes that were filmed. So we've heard this before, United Earth ship. The United Federation of Planets wouldn't be established until later during the first season, although Starfleet would be used in the next broadcast episode, The Menagerie. So in canon, the Federation exists at this point, but obviously as they were producing the show, the United Federation of Planets didn't exist yet, which is very interesting because the Federation is based on the United Nations. Even the flag is
Interesting.
kind of, I'm not going to say it's a ripoff, but even the flag is inspired by the United Nations flag.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I find it really funny that, because you got to figure the United Nations was founded only like 20 years earlier.
Yeah, that's true. Thereabouts
So,
anyway. Yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, I can't remember if it was 45 or 46,
I
but
don't
it
know the
was.
exact date. I just know that it was pretty immediately after World War II.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm assuming
Yeah.
45. So 21 years, 21 years.
Yeah, enough that it's like a recently founded thing in people's mind. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this would have been fairly recent in the cultural zeitgeist, especially for older adults. This would
exactly.
have been a. Yeah. So once the Federation comes around, it looks oddly familiar.
Yeah, well, they would have. I mean, in the '60s, they would have seen this as like the logical evolution of the United Nations would be a united group of planets. It just makes sense as an evolution.
Well, ironically, though, and this is, I just want to be clear, this isn't established in Star Trek yet. This really gets laid out more in like Starship Enterprise. I'm sorry, I keep calling it Starship Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise, as far as canon is concerned. There
Mhm.
is already a unified government on Earth by the time of Star Trek First Contact, for example. If I'm
Oh,
remembering
okay.
correctly, certainly by the time Enterprise rolls around and because Starfleet is an Earth organization, it is not like a United States organization.
It's not like I mean, it's been a while since we've gone to our into an Orville comparison, so it's not the Union, is what you're saying.
It will become the Union because the
Oh,
Union is essentially this federation. But one of the most interesting parts of Star Trek Enterprise is watching Starfleet interact with the the four alien species that would become the first four members of the Federation: the Vulcans, the Andorians, and the Tellarites. and we meet them all for the first time in
Oh,
Star
so
Trek Enterprise.
Starfleet and the Federation are two separate entities.
Technically, Starfleet gets rolled into the Federation, but technically Starfleet is an Earth organization, which is why most starships, and this is a real retcon here, that's why a lot of starships have heavily human crews, because technically Starfleet is an Earth organization, which is why Starfleet Academy and Starfleet headquarters are located on Earth.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, I know
Now,
that
every member of the Federation is open to Starfleet, but it is
they can join it
based
if they want.
correct.
Gotcha,
Now,
gotcha.
for
Again,
some
similar to the
species,
Union.
yeah, pretty much, and
Yeah.
that's why you'll see like Spock is a bit of an oddity. He's not the only Vulcan to join Starfleet, but he's one of the few. And they kind of allude to this in the J.J. Abrams movies, but it's true.
Right.
There are Vulcans in Starfleet, but it's kind of, and they touch on this similarly in the Orville. Alara says, I believe in the first episode, that there aren't a lot of Soleans in the military, so when they join, they tend to get fast tracked. I would
On
say
that show.
probably the same for Vulcans too, though. I would imagine most Vulcans get fast tracked
Oh
through
yeah, I'm sure.
Starfleet.
Yeah.
But now it's time to pay for this thing that we're doing. So buy shit.
Forsan Records is proud to introduce the newest album from Valena, including the singles Cut Me to the Quick,
Cut me to the quick and tear me asunder. Push me to the limit. Anything to pull me under.
and Remedy. Valena, Save Me From Myself, available now wherever you get your music.
And we're back. So Baylock gives the crew 10 minutes to pray to their deities, a very odd instance and rare instance where Star Trek references religion directly.
Yeah. I was like, deities. Ooh, respect.
Well, he's just, I mean, look, I guess that makes him less of an asshole, marginally.
I mean, okay, have we seen him yet? That well, who we think?
No, well, we're about to. This all happens relatively
Okay,
quickly.
because
So
I've got notes on him on his first appearance. I've got notes on his first appearance.
yeah, so Spock obtains a visual of Baylock somehow. I've always found it fascinating that somehow, and they never really explain how this is possible, how they can get video in a place where they are not at. Like there's a later episode where they finally get visual. It's allegedly the first time anyone from the Federation sees a Romulan, and they somehow get a
Huh.
camera inside their ship. Now, I guess
Huh.
that's oh, you know what? I just they somehow, because if a ship has a communications relay, then they have a camera. So
I think they
maybe
are
they hack.
tapping theoretically into their screen. I think is how it is.
That's what
Yeah,
it is. Yep, I just answered my own question. Never mind.
because they I believe it's been so long since I've seen that movie. I believe they do that in Galaxy Quest. I believe they
Yes,
tap
they
into
do.
yes, yeah.
Yep, which, by the
But
way, I watched it. I watched that last night. Still good.
I mean, I've seen that movie so many times, I never get tired of it. It's one
Still
of the
good.
few things I like Tim Allen in. And then this is just a note over the course of several interactions with this thing, which is that it's annoying and frustrating, and I kind of want it to die, which I recognize misses the whole point.
So what you're saying is that you understand how Bailey feels.
Yes. Well,
Justin, my friend, you're in danger of becoming a Republican.
I mostly just because he refuses to listen.
No,
That's
no,
what got so
It's okay.
frustrating.
Listen. You don't like gray, big-headed aliens. It's
I
like, hey,
don't
man,
like pig-headed,
hey, man.
stubborn. That was frustrating. That every time Kirk was like, "Hey, so we didn't do anything wrong. Stop threatening to murder us." And he just would refuse to listen. And I'm like, man, this would be so much quicker if they could just do a murder. But
But
I recognize it defeats the point. I get it. It's still annoying.
So, fun fact though, director Joseph Sargent suggested to Nimoy that after the first sight of Baylock, he ignored the script, which called for an emotional sort of fear reaction.
Yeah, that definitely worked. It worked for the scene.
It worked way better, which now I'm really annoyed because in the first ever production episode, the director says, "Hey, Leonard, don't do the emotional shit." And then in so many subsequent episodes, we get the emotional shit.
Yeah, but I think though that makes the emotional shit more effective.
I'm not
I
talking about the good emotional shit. I mean like the smirks, the smarm, the
Oh yeah, the smarm, yeah, the sass.
yeah, just the sassy Spock. I'm not
No,
feeling
but
it.
I enjoy some of his one-liners. Like when earlier in the
Oh,
episode when the guy's like when he's like, "Oh, I have adrenaline glands," and Spock's like, "Ah, it's too bad." I thought that was funny.
oh, earlier in this episode, yeah, when
Yeah.
he's like, I would recommend you have them removed.
Yeah. I was like, I enjoy stuff like that.
Which
That's funny.
that gave me much more Sheldon Cooper vibes than Spock vibes.
Yeah. When and then yeah, I mentioned it earlier, but when Sulu is like, "That's why I wouldn't mess with Spock." It was very sitcom-y, and
Yeah.
I can see how that might pull other people out, but that's that kind of stuff that breeds character for me.
Another fun fact. So speaking of Baylock and this character design that you love very, very much,
I
in the
love it because
19
it's bad.
well, it gets worse. In the 1970s, I don't know if it's pronounced Mego or Mego. I'm going to say Mego because it sounds funnier. The Mego toy company used Baylock's puppet head to create the Keeper action figure doll, which was supposed to be the Telosian, and despite Baylock not being a Telosian. So the Keeper,
Remind me what a Telosian is again.
the big-headed ones from the
Oh, big
pilot.
heads. I could see that. I could see why you could. They look similar, but
Well,
they're
and
not the same.
yeah, I made a passing mention of the fact that there were a lot of toys made that didn't go with the series at all. This is one of
Yeah,
many. And
so funny.
hopefully we will get the opportunity to expose you to more of them, but this was just atrocious. I
It
believe
looked
they
bad.
also I believe they also made a toy of the assault phaser from Where No Man Has Gone Before that is never seen in the original Star Trek again. I don't remember if the phaser rifles are in Next Generation, but I do know that an updated, much better looking model makes it a regular appearances in Deep Space Nine.
I mean, I seem to recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the Chris Pine version, they use assault phaser rifles in those movies, do they not?
I can't remember in the first one. I think certainly by the second one there are. I can't remember though.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think the assault phasers are a staple in Star Trek. They just weren't in the first series.
fair enough. Yeah, because at a certain point, you're like, they can't keep using pistols. We have to get cooler looking toys. I assume that's what an executive would say.
So did you notice though, there in the scene on the bridge where McCoy's in the bridge, his uniform changes 3 times in the same
I
scene.
did notice that he went from like his Doctor Spock, or his Doctor not Spock, Smock.
His
Like
Dr. Smock.
he's got his smock outfit with the and then he's got this outfit, and yeah, he swapped from like the smock to this, which made me go like, yeah, what why when does he have to wear what uniform? Is it just based on comfort? That seems kind of odd for like as this episode really establishes a really military based outfit. You would think you'd want consistency in your uniforms, would you not?
Well, he does. The thing of it is his smock, as you referred to it very effectively, is what he wears when he's doing medical work. His regular uniform is what he would wear to the bridge, unless it was a medical emergency. So I think with doctors, especially, there is some latitude where,
That makes a certain amount of
well,
sense.
because his first responsibility is as a doctor, not as an officer. Now he just so happens to be an officer, but his
Yeah.
first priority is at that of a physician. So I think
And
there's
I
some
really
latitude.
appreciate, especially in this episode, I appreciated how, yeah, that's his first concern. His first concern is to the health of the crew, where he's like, I'll fuck you over, and I'll report you, and I'll take you to task. And Kirk is like, I just
He's like,
not now.
yeah, exactly.
Put a pin in it. I don't have time to deal with this.
Which I mean, to be fair, that's a check and balance for the doctor because, frankly, at the time, I'm inclined to agree with Kirk. It's like
Well, I
this is
really like
not
the
the time.
moment. I mean, to a point anyway, but I really like the moment where Kirk came out and he was like, "Look, we didn't exactly nail that. Let's practice it and let's get better, guys." And I was like, "That's a real like That's a real 4-point leadership moment for Kirk. And I was like, okay, I get why he's the captain. Like I quite like that moment. I was like, this demonstrates why he's in charge. And it really made me feel like, okay, I get why Kirk is in charge. And I like that moment.
Well, it's also the fact that, and Kirk is not the only captain to do this, mind you, but we're talking about Kirk specifically. Kirk is also very good at maintaining that line of professionalism, though, because like we see, he can be Bones is one of his dearest and best friends, but when he needs to check him, he will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I was like, because
Yeah,
there's points where Bones, you feel Bones get too familiar. And
yeah.
I like that Kirk is like, hey, bro, like this is what it is. And I really like those moments. Again, it builds that relationship.
The other note I had is Sulu has a watch hobby too.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
So I'm now.
I,
I just want to count all of Sulu's hobbies over the years because off the top of my head, he's an amateur botanist, amateur fencer. I think somebody had said that he was into boxing as well, like a casual aside. He has a
yeah,
thing for timepieces. I know for a fact that because of the fourth movie, he can fly a helicopter. What can this man not do?
what can he not do? What can he not do? This also at this point I'd really noted this episode's really tense. And
It is.
I meant to note this, but I noted it at some point. I don't know why, but this episode was really focused, in my opinion, on the functionality of the Enterprise itself, which was really kind of neat.
Yeah.
Like this, I think was this the first time we got to see the Enterprise use its phasers? It feels like it is.
Production wise, yes. I don't think chronologically. I'm trying to think now. I honestly can't remember. I'll have to get back to you on that. In
Interesting
the
because
editor Jake will have to get back to you on that.
editor Jake, this is the moment. Put the note in right now. Yeah, okay.
We also got more sweaty Kirk.
Yeah, more. This episode had quite a bit of Sweaty Kirk. I was like,
did.
when he was on the
It did.
exercise machine, I was like, oh dear lord. And he's just the way he's grunting to himself. It's like Shatner, man, dial it back. Like just
Which the thing I love though is that he leaves sick bay in a hurry, and then when he's in the turbo lift, he calls and is like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Da da da da," and he's like, "Oh, it doesn't sound that serious. I'll go change
yeah,
first."
yeah.
And
So,
then he
so I
proceeds
have
to
time
have
to have
lunch.
yeah. I was like, so I have time to go have a shower. Then is what you're saying.
I mean, basically, and I'm like, well, then he was in a huff because he had to leave his physical, but then he's
Yeah,
like, "Oh,
he doesn't sound like he wanted to do in the first place. It looked like Bones had to like track him down to do it.
well," and what inadvertently would become funny because of the very odd, sort of belief that William Shatner was a fat man
Yeah.
back in these days. It's like you could make the joke. It's like, well, Kirk doesn't like to exercise. It's like, no, Kirk clearly likes to exercise. It's just Bones was probably, and this would track for Bones' character in this episode. He probably kept him going with the heart rate up a little too long.
Yeah, well, I think maybe, and this is based on nothing because I haven't seen like any of those movies, but maybe the notion of like fat Kirk comes from the movies.
It does. It
I think
does.
maybe,
Not
yeah,
even the first one. It really starts in the latter movies. Like, and again, by this point, William Shatner's well into his 50s.
yeah. Like
Like, leave the man alone.
right. I mean, he's doing you the good grace of coming back to do these movies when he didn't have to do that. I mean, I'm sure he asked for probably way too much money, but still.
Yeah, I'm a staunch advocate for William Shatner in the original series, and even in the first two films. Not fat.
He's not
That-
fat in this.
He's not fat. He's not fat. I don't know how you could say that he was fat. Does he look
He's
like
putting
he
in the
eats,
work, is what I'm saying.
Does he look like he eats steak? Yeah, but
Yeah, but I mean, 1960s fit. Like those are the guys who I think I joke about this all the time, but those are the guys who could like do exercise and still smoke a cigarette. Like they didn't care about like.
well, and all I'm saying is that John Hamm in Mad Men became a sex symbol, and he had very much the same physique. In fact, probably a little bit leaner than William Shatner had.
I know I don't think he's a big. I don't consider him a big. I think if anything, Leonard Nimoy's a bigger guy than him.
Not
Not in terms of like rotundness, but in terms of like
yeah.
height and just,
Oh yeah. I think he's a taller
presence.
man. Yeah. I would agree with that. I was like, I'm not sure what direction you're going here.
Yeah, like just a
I don't
like
know
not
if
a
you're.
more rotund gentleman, but
Yeah, I don't know if you're going up or out.
more like that way.
Yeah, just kind of a
Yeah,
broader, taller.
Broader, yeah.
Bailey succumbs to hysteria, and Kirk orders him off the bridge. Dr. McCoy rebukes Kirk, arguing that Bailey's outburst was a result of Kirk putting too much pressure on him. I disagree because at that point, Sulu didn't crack, Uhura didn't crack, nobody else on the bridge cracked, only Bailey cracked.
But to be fair to Bailey, my pushback to that would be that up until that point, everyone's been and I brought it up earlier, but everyone's been kind of a dick to Bailey. Like every time, like he brings up a suggestion, they have like a comeback for him. It's just everyone's been just so I could see where it's just like nobody's supporting him, and every time he's like, "Look, I'm human. This is a scary time. I'm having a bad moment." No one's really like being sympathetic to him. They're all just kind of like, "Dudes, stop being such a little baby." Like that just kind of seems to be the response by everyone except for McCoy.
So this might sound a little harsh into never having served on a starship or a ship of any kind. I guess my rebuttal to that would be you're in a command position on the bridge of a starship. Suck it up,
That's a fair
Buttercup.
rebuttal. That is a fair rebuttal. None of the other guys snap, but again, my response to that would be no one's being a dick to Sulu. Like,
Well, would you be a dick to Sulu? He'll stab you.
He will. I mean, it's proven he will.
Well, I mean,
But
to be fair,
I think
Bailey.
maybe that has to do with Bailey being new. Was what I was.
Yeah, it does. And I'm to be fair, I'm pretty sure Bailey'd shoot you. But
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. With minimal hesitation.
yeah, because Bailey clearly has no issue shooting things.
No.
Bones also points out that he warned Kirk of Bailey's condition ahead of time, which fair enough. It's established that he did do that. We didn't see it, but Bones alludes to it, and Kirk doesn't dismiss it.
We do see it though. We see it when they're in the elevator. They're going down.
We see it again, but Bones alludes to the fact that he warned him that it might
earlier
be too
prior
soon.
to that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just remember the moment where he's like, they're in the elevator, like, listen, he sounds so unsure.
So he brings it up again, but it is established that Bones had indicated to Kirk earlier around the time of Bailey's promotion that he may not be ready for that yet.
Got it.
The argument, however, inspires Kirk to try bluffing Baylock. He tells Baylock that the Enterprise contains Corbomite, a substance that automatically destroys any attacker. This is in my opinion, this is a relatively easy bluff to call because
Yeah.
the idea of that's just patently absurd.
So this is the point where I think I'll the comparison to the holdover maneuver. The reason why I'm like I think maybe it's more similar than because initially I was like nah, but then I thought about it and I was like if the notion is that it's a kind of a suicide maneuver that you don't 100% sure know that it's going to work, in that regard it is kind of similar. In that he didn't know it would work. It was a real shot in the dark, and she didn't know what the holdover maneuver would theoretically do. No one had done it before.
See, it's one of the things I hate the most about The Last Jedi, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now because it'll take us forever.
Yeah, I know. I knew specifically that would bother you, and I was like, I have to, because I was like, it in theory is in my opinion is in similar of spirit, I guess would be my point. But I wouldn't compare them otherwise. Just that's it. They're obviously not similar in any other regard.
In the sense that they're kind of opposites in a way too, because the holdo maneuver is something that she is actually going to do, whereas Kirk doesn't actually have Corbomite. That it's a bluff. So it's all about who's calling the bluff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I get the comparison. So you're not off base there. But the thing is, the Corbomite maneuver, other than its kind of absurd simplicity, is not a bad bluff. Whereas the holdo maneuver just completely negates everything in the Star Wars universe, and I hate it so much.
That's totally fair. My thing about I have questions about the maneuver ultimately, but they hinge on the big reveal at the end, which I don't want to give away.
Kirk says it's a substance that automatically destroys an attacker and claims he has little regard for the fact that the Enterprise would also be destroyed in exchange, which this is kind of where the bluff comes from. Because if the Enterprise is going to be destroyed anyway, and Corbomite was the thing, you really wouldn't care.
So is this, I'm just thinking about this now, is this similar, or is this not similar, but is in Galaxy Quest, when he says that we have the what do they call it in that movie? You know, the big MacGuffin, the thing that they end up using at the end of the movie?
The
Omega 13. Is this a reference to? Is that a reference to this?
I don't think it's a reference to this specifically, but it's a reference to the general space MacGuffin.
Of being like, I have this big thing that I don't know, but in this case, he does know that he doesn't have it, so maybe it's not a.
Yeah, that's
it's
what
not-
that's what I'm
certainly not
saying because
one-to-one, yeah.
yeah, because it's not an actual MacGuffin, it's a fake MacGuffin. While Kirk awaits a response, Bailey contritely asks permission to resume his duties, which Kirk grants. Balak demands proof of the Corbomite's existence, but when Kirk refuses, he does not destroy the Enterprise. Instead, a small tug ship detaches from the Viserys and tows the Enterprise deep into First Federation space, where Balak states the crew will be interned on an Earth-like planet and the Enterprise destroyed. The Enterprise may have escaped the tractor beam, but you won't escape this ad spot. I mean, unless you fast forward, but don't do that because our sponsors are cool. And they're nice and friendly. They're not going to blow up your spaceship. They're going to give you this awesome thing.
So today's episode is sponsored by the Spur of the Moment podcast, everybody. Come join us every Saturday and we're going to do this. We're going to sit here. We're going to talk about the news. Time to talk about the Minecraft.
Okay.
It looks
So,
bad. We're going to talk about movies. That new Joker movie is apparently terrible and I want to see it so badly because I hear it's awful. And we're going to make some jokes. We're going to have some laughs.
There's a lot of funny jokes in there. There's a lot of weird jokes in there. The Channing Tatum one will always make me laugh, especially when you hear the behind the scenes stuff. Like when you hear the behind the scenes story of how they just phoned them up.
We're occasionally going to have other people along for the ride.
A really fun fact, though, is I learned last year that that Coraline was Leica and not Disney.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I can see why you would make that mistake. Yeah. Because it does seem like it's a different. And to be fair,
That would be a horrifying, terrible Disney movie.
It would be because yeah. And we're just gonna have a generally good time. George, do you have anything else you want to say about our podcast? Make people watch it.
We watch movies. Sometimes we watch shows, but we always have fun.
Here
On the spur. 3, 2, 1. On the spur of the podcast moment.
Yeah, we nailed it. Nailed the ad spot.
Podcast.
Yeah. It's Spur of the Moment podcast every Saturday. We nailed it.
You can expect awesome content like that.
We cut flawless promos every single week.
Kirk insinuates that the tug ship's tractor beam can't possibly be as powerful as the one in the Viserys. So Kirk orders the Enterprise to engage the engines at right angles to their course. Just as its engines are about to explode from the overload, the Enterprise breaks free. This apparently disables the alien vessel as the crew picks up a distress call when its mothership does not answer.
That whole sequence, I love that. I will say, I forgot to mention getting away with. We did this transition into the ad, but getting away with the Corbomite Manuever. The whole lead up to that, when he walks back onto the bridge, that sequence was so effective. Like
it is.
Yeah, especially when he comes. I was like, oh wow, yeah. Like his performance. A lot of credit to guest stars on this show, but his performance over the course of this episode, I'm like, oh man, he really deserves main lead character status. Like, I think he would be a worthy addition to the bridge permanently. I think.
Too bad.
Too bad. Yeah, too bad.
I did like the sequence, but you know what ruined it for me, honestly? And you may not have noticed this because I noticed the dumbest stuff when we watched Star Trek. When the crew was rocking around in the hallways, did you notice the guy wearing the life jacket?
I did notice that. Oh my god! I was like, why is he wearing But I otherwise like that sequence because my thoughts on sequences like that is it's all about commitment to being like the more you can commit to it, the more believable it looks. And just the camera work, the in-camera work, it was that everyone committed to the believability of it, which made it fun for me. But I absolutely noticed the life jackets. Yes,
So
why are they wearing life jackets?
Every time I see this, though, I'm reminded of the very good. I can't remember if it was SNL or Mad TV. I think it might have been Mad TV now that I think about it. But the gag starts at Star Trek, and it's like, hard to starboard, hard to port.
Yeah.
But he straightens up first and then goes, steady as she goes.
Yeah, I mean, It's all when it comes to scenes like that. It's all about commitment because obviously, yeah, they can't afford exterior shots all that much. So it makes the moment feel more when you commit to it, makes it feel more believable for me.
Well, the funny thing though is that in Star Trek Voyager, they actually built the set on I think you would call that a gimbal.
I don't know if that's what it's called. I know what you're talking about. There's a name
Yeah.
for it. I don't know if
So
that's what it's called though.
it would the platform would actually move though. So when it was
Oh,
very, I will say this, that must be very helpful to the actors.
oh, for sure. Yeah, I know they do something. They use that I don't device technology, what have you, but for 2014 Godzilla movie? I think it's the 2014 Godzilla movie where the bit where they're in the trains and
Mm-hmm.
that's done using the same technology. Makes it look more believable, certainly.
Yeah, and I already said that Kirk sure is crabby in this episode.
He really is. Yeah, yeah.
Well, listen, he's tired. He has a female yeoman, and they fed him salad.
Yeah, that's why he's so cranky. He's been fed salad. He's just like he's like, I'm gonna go be nice to this alien. And they're like, Are you sure you want to be nice to this alien? He's like, I'm gonna be nice to this alien. Get off my back, people. I'm gonna need you to get all the way off my back. I've only had a salad today.
What does he say in Breaking Bad? So I would appreciate it if you would kindly climb out of my ass.
I mean, I always do that. If you watch pitch meetings, Ryan George pitch meetings is always, I'm gonna need you to get all the way off my back.
But to be fair, like that scene does come off a little not campy. What's cheesy? But I actually like it when he's like, "No, we're the Federation. This is
Yeah, we're
what we
supposed to
do."
be the good guys, everybody.
Yeah. I actually like that and I appreciate that because honestly, when Star Trek is very idealistic, a lot of people crap on it. Those are some of my favorite moments.
But also, I think that moment doesn't come out of nowhere, even in this episode,
No.
because it definitely is the end point of the arc that Kirk has had through this episode, which is, yeah, at the beginning of it, he doesn't immediately jump to, he doesn't blow the thing up until he absolutely has to, and that's sort of interesting to me because as once again, I'm coming as the newbie. As the newbie, my cultural understanding of Captain Kirk is that he's not gun shy. So it's interesting to see him be gun shy, to see him be more, and this is a reductive take, but be more Picard like. And I thought that was interesting. And I thought that, yeah, him not just being like, yeah, let's just take off. We don't need to help him. I thought that was interesting. We're
Yep.
gonna get to the next part
Very much
because
so.
I think the next part undercuts that. But
Though recognizing it may be a trap, Kirk, McCoy, and Bailey form a boarding party to give assistance to the disabled ship. They beam over and discover that Baylock, on their monitor, was an effigy. The real Baylock, looking like a hyper-intelligent human child, enthusiastically welcomes them aboard.
okay, I have to. So, okay. First note is no fucking way. It's a space baby. I did not, legit, genuine, sincerely, did not see that coming. Like, I did not see it coming, flat
Ten-
out. And then
Technically, it's a space toddler.
well, that was my question because it seemed to have adult hands at
So,
times.
so fun, and this might answer your question. Do you know who that was?
No,
That was a 7-year-old Clint Howard, younger brother of Ron Howard.
no way. I wasn't sure if it was like the baby because it was clearly being ADR'd over, right?
Yes.
But I
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
tell. But he had like weird adult hands with rings. So I'm like, is he like in a costume and then there's an adult with like hands? Or are those his hands?
Apparently,
I've got a lot
those
of notes on this creature.
you know what? I didn't know, or I didn't read rather, if they had done any prosthetics to his hands. So maybe, but that was a 7-year-old.
Okay. I could definitely tell it was a child, but it just what confused me was the adult hands. He clearly had what appeared to be adult hands.
But what's really funny is when I read that it was Clint Howard, it was like instant light bulb for me. I'm like, oh, I see it.
I'm not familiar enough with him to see it.
Because it's one of those things. I didn't click who it was, and then I googled, and I'm like, oh, I know that guy. He's been in so
I'm
much.
guessing editor Jake is going to do a hard cut to who Clint Howard is. So
Oh,
when I
yeah.
watch this episode later on, I'll know.
Oh yeah.
Well, thanks, editor Jake.
Baylock explains that he was merely testing the Enterprise and its crew to discover their true intentions. As Kirk and company relax, Baylock expresses a desire to learn more about humans and their culture. Balok suggests they allow a member of their crew to remain on his ship as an emissary of the Federation, which doesn't exist yet. Bailey happily volunteers, and Balok gives them a tour of his ship.
Okay, so I was gonna say the very close up I'm talking about is when Balok is like, I would love someone to stay here and hang out with me, and it's just kind of implying, and then Kirk is like, what about you? And then it does that weird close up on his face, like what the. All right, and then it's just the scene is so weird. This character is confusing and upsetting because it's the moment where they're walking out holding hands together, and I'm like, what's happening? What is any of this? And just ultimately that this ending completely undercuts the tension of the rest of the episode for me.
It also felt a little bit rushed to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely a rushed resolution. Where everyone's like, it's just like a cut to laughter. It's so weird.
This is not the last time that Kirk will use the Corbomite maneuver. Apparently, which I don't even remember. I think this may have been one of the episodes that I missed somehow.
Huh.
In season 2's The Deadly Years, Kirk once again uses Corbomite as a bluff, this time against the Romulans.
Really?
Yeah,
Is it one of those maneuvers that like I don't know how to describe it better than like when they get in the playbooks where like that's the Corbomite maneuver. Like is that a maneuver that becomes well known that is associated with Kirk like in the future?
Apparently, I don't know.
Or does it?
One would think, although something like any maneuver that requires a bluff is only effective for so long.
True. I would
Because-
just because I would love to see in like I'm kind of, or at least I'm kind of hoping in like one of the other many Star Trek shows that someone pulls the Corbomite maneuver or like a version of it, and then they make reference back to it, like, oh, that's just like when Kirk pulled the Corbomite maneuver. Like I love references like that.
Maybe. I mean, it would be funny though, because if they did it in Strange New Worlds, then it wouldn't be the Corbomite maneuver, because that would have technically happened first.
True.
Prequels are a pain in the ass. Anyway, and we never see Bailey again.
No, because he went to live with his young child adult companion.
Yep, we never ever.
So, but here's my question though about the Corbomite maneuver and Baylor. I keep forgetting the name.
Balok.
Balok. Did he ever have any intention of calling Kirk's bluff? Was he ever going to blow up the Enterprise?
I didn't.
It felt like he never had any intention. That's what it felt like to me.
So I think this is pure speculation. So obviously don't quote this as canon. I think Balok's ship was big enough that it could have withstood pretty much any weaponry that the Federation or a similar species would have. So I think he was waiting to see that if faced with their imminent demise, they would try to fight.
They would respond. So
Yeah.
the idea is that the cube alerts him, and then he comes, and then he's like, well, let's see if they did that intentionally, basically, I guess.
Yeah. Although I will say that's kind of a shitty thing to do, because when you have a thing that once it locks on, it just follows them, because they even tried to back up.
Earlier in the episode, I mean, Kirk tried to be like, we didn't know that it didn't give any information of what it was. It didn't be like, hey, go away. Like, it didn't say anything. So what did you expect us to do? Like, I think it's a fair response.
Well, and it also started emitting radiation that's harmful to them, and they couldn't get away from it. So what else you gonna do?
What else did he want him to do? But then I guess the argument from his perspective, I guess, would be that's what the test is for, to make sure that you aren't aggressive.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, but I always find it interesting though, because Q does this too, and this is why I hate Q as a character in Next Generation, is he puts people in situations where violence is not only one of the few options, sometimes it's the only option, and it's certainly a logical option.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, what else? I would have been like, what did you, if you were in the situation I was in, what would you have done? The same thing? Like,
yeah, precisely.
Yeah. I just like that's where I'm like, I started to get irritated. I was like, oh, this thing is annoying because all of Kirk's points are valid and it's just not listening. And that's my thing is like, if this is a test, then them constantly being like, yeah, we have no way, we'll just back up and leave and you never have to see us again. To me, that's passing the test. Like, that's the point where they pass the test. They're not displaying any aggressive behaviors. They're not demonstrating that they have any ill intent. So why push them to the point that he did? It felt unnecessary. And the ending kind of contradicts that anyway. I did not care for the ending of this episode. I felt it completely undercuts the rest of the episode, which was otherwise an effective and tense episode. Being like, space 7-year-old, like, didn't do it for me.
And
But it's a great twist. It's a great twist.
It's an unexpected twist, yeah. I think certainly in 66 it was a better twist than it is today.
I that's where I kind of disagree because it completely got me. I thought it was going to turn out to be the thing, and they were going to blow him up. Like the bad looking thing. I thought that's what he was going to actually have turned out. It was effective to me. I wasn't expecting him to be a space child. Like that was pretty effective.
Hey, fair enough. You know, and you know what? And I'm probably only saying that because I've seen it before.
It's one of those things where like once you know it, you probably recognize it. But for me, yeah, I because this show kind of, I guess maybe it just evolves a lot of times to fight bad aliens. It's what I understand it to be. So when it's not that, it's refreshing.
Very much so. Our red shirt tally, however, still remains at 2. So, I mean, I guess that's actually good news because less dead people.
It makes us look probably bloodthirsty when we're like, I'm disappointed by the lack of red shirt death.
Oh, their time will come.
their time will come, and it will be a plenty.
This is like Final Destination.
A real bloodbath.
This is like Final Destination in space. It will happen.
Okay. Sorry, George just said that's why their shirts are red, so you can't see them bleed. Oh goodness.
It's so our enemies can't see us bleed.
So our enemies can't see. That's one of my all-time favorite jokes. There's a joke about that. One of my favorite building ball jokes is about the captain who has the red shirt, the brown pants.
Well, friends, crewmates, shipmates, first mates, whatever you are, space children. That was the Corbomite Maneuver. Join us next week on The Final Frontier, where we look at our first 2-part episode, The Menagerie. Now, Justin, I went back and forth, and I guess I'll kind of get your vote on this. Since this is kind of Eclipse episode in a way, because it's a 2-parter though, so do we want to do just one combo episode? Because a lot of it is footage we've seen before in the pilot.
I was my understanding that's how we were going to tackle it. We were going to tackle them together.
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
Is it really cliffhangery? Because those are we could always do a real big cliffhanger. Those are always kind of fun, but I think it'd probably be easier to just tackle them together.
Yeah, because honestly, it is basically one big episode, which it's longer to watch, but I think our discussion will be a similar length because again, a lot of this is footage that we've seen before. So we don't really need to rehash it. If you're watching this show, you've already watched our breakdown of the pilot. There's nothing new in that regard. So we're basically just going to be talking about courtroom scenes.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Just a bunch of, if it's just basically And I mean, worst case, we decide we shoot it as one and we decide to split it in half regardless.
Yeah, probably not. It's just, it might be a slightly longer episode, but I honestly think it'll be in the same. Because the other thing it does for you guys, the viewers, is it's one less episode that we got to go through to get through the first season, which means you get season 2 just a little bit faster. So, yeah, that's what we're going to do. So join us next week when we take care of The Menagerie, parts 1 and 2. Watch long and comment.
First thought on Pike is, oh my god, I get that reference now.
What I'm saying is that as it's playing out on screen, it gives you the impression, at least initially, that Spock wasn't anticipating being followed, even though that's really silly, because as soon as the Enterprise leaves, Kirk's going to be like, the fuck?
It involves Spock, like, being utterly devoted to this man, that he's willing to risk everything that we, in terms of the audience, theoretically, have never met before.